What's up, guys? It's Duke DeLate for the Intimacy Liberation Army, and today we're talking about practicing compassion in a social environment. This is part of the How to Be More Attractive series. I will release this all in a big book thing later on, but let's get into it. Understanding and empathizing with the sentiments of others is the hallmark of compassion. Compassion is basically being able to get in touch with somebody else's feelings and add on to that, being able to relate the fact that you understand what they're doing. Part of this is active listening, which Jack shot a video on a few days ago. I'll link that right there. And but it's going to serve you really well in any social environment, being compassionate with other people. A lot of people look at compassion as weakness and the ability for, or laying out to others the ability for them to walk all over you or take advantage of you. But done correctly with the right boundaries, it can really draw people in and make you seem a whole lot more attractive than you did at first go, because they feel instant rapport with you. Whether you're interacting with loved ones or total strangers, or friends of friends, or into a new social group, if you cultivate the whole compassion thing, it can really help you form deeper bonds much faster and foster a more caring atmosphere. Some suggestions, tips. I think there's 8 of them in this one. Tips for practicing compassion in a social environment. Tip number 1. Start with empathy. Start with being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Compassion requires you to have a certain empathetic view with another human, instead of looking them as a adversary or as somebody who is dangerous or somebody you should be cautious around. If you can feel and comprehend the emotions that are that they're carrying, that you can put yourself in their place and feel their emotions, you're going to go a lot farther in being able to intuit how to communicate with them. A lot of times you'll be sitting around in a bar or club scenario, and there'll be people with you, and you're just trying to get out what you're trying to say. I saw, what was that movie, Fight Club, where Marla Singer was just like, they're just waiting for their turn to speak. And so many people are doing that because they're not mindful of the people in front of them, and they're not able to put themselves in the other person's shoes, put themselves in the other person's experience, and feel what's going on with their intended audience. And if you can do this, if you can focus on doing this, it's not actually that difficult. It's like, okay, where are you at? And if you ask some questions and try to get more details on how they're feeling, you ask feeling type questions like, all right, well, so what does that mean for you? Or why are you doing it like that? Why don't you, like, what's the emotion that's driving that? If you ask those kind of questions, people are going to kind of dig in deep and like share more, and then you'll understand kind of where they're at, and you can kind of see their journey in the way that they see their journey, and that builds rapport super quickly. If you know their point of view, you can respond to them with empathy. It's like I said, builds rapport super quickly. I was in conversation with this girl 2 nights ago, and we were talking about some problems she was having with some boys, and she continued to assert this frame, like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna cut them all off and glow in my own queenliness because I don't deserve to be treated this way, right? But you could tell by putting myself in her shoes that she didn't mean that. Like, she didn't want to cut herself off. It was just a strategy that she used to handle her past relationship trauma. And so I probed a little deeper, and I explained why I had done that in the past, and then I'd moved on to a different strategy. And then she finally understood kind of where I was coming from, because I sort of led with getting into the emotional state she was at, and then presented a more interesting, or at least a more variety based option. So developing empathy is super important for compassion as a whole. Second tip is to active listening. If you listen super carefully in any social situation, your ability to actively listen to others is going to have a dramatic effect on how they respond to you. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. So if you listen super carefully and you make an effort to kind of repeat back what they're saying to make sure that you understand well, and you're very, very attentive, they're going to trust you more to continue to talk. A lot of my clients in the Captivators program, where they want to talk and talk and talk and talk and not run out of things to say, most of that's driven from feeling like you're not being liked, and the quality of the things that you're saying is not creating an impact on the person in front of you. But if you remember, conversations have two people. So if you can get liked by the things that are coming out of your mouth, like yesterday we were talking about humor, and in the Captivators program we talk about storytelling and stuff. You got that aspect, but you also have the aspect of them liking you for them talking to you. And if you're an active listener, you have a whole lot of power in generating trust, generating liking, generating rapport with them, because they feel like they're actually seen. They feel like they're actually heard. I actually got with that conversation with that girl the other day, she actually texted me and she was like, "Oh, thank you for making me feel seen," right? And that creates a connection that's like way deeper than you could have had from any surface level thing, or canned lines, or just relating yourself without engaging with the other person. Jax, like I said, also did an active listening video. Click it. Here's the card, and so you can. He has a little bit more tactical stuff about the active listening. As far as active listening is concerned, that helps. But on an overall basis, in order to show more compassion with people, the next tip is you have to just pay attention. Pay attention to their body language. Pay attention to whether they are exhibiting stress, whether they're relaxed and calm and chill, whether they're putting on a front, where they're being incongruent. If you just pay attention to all the little micro-calibrated movements that they're doing, and you pay attention to the words that are coming out of their mouth, you can gain a whole lot of understanding about where they're coming from. Because a lot of times people are going to tell you things to mask the pain that they're talking about. And if you can sort of get into the pain and understand like where they're afraid or hurting or feeling loss or feeling betrayed, whatever, then you can sort of respond directly to the emotional points. And when you do that, it creates a lot of compassion. It creates a lot of sense of compassion when somebody's sharing with you and being vulnerable, and they're encouraged to be more vulnerable. And that kind of investment it really blossoms with you showing empathy, and you showing compassion, and you active listening, and putting all these tools together. When they realize that you're somebody who not only hears them, sees them, understands them for who they actually are, and then when they share more, you continue to care for, the little idiosyncrasies of their communication, they get a lot more trust in you. Like, basically, it just builds more rapport and trust and liking. Like, that's the whole point of the using compassion to be more attractive. And you're a much more attractive human in that space. You may not generate sexual attraction by turning into a therapist or whatever, but you can generate a whole lot of attraction as a human, and then leverage that, for whatever goals you want towards intimacy. Next tip, be generous. So many people want to dominate the conversation so they can get a little ego spike. They want to get a little bit of validation or a little bit of attention. And the more giving you are in conversation, the more people feel heard, and they also feel more important. They feel a lot of value. Some of the nice guy syndrome, a lot of guys will come and try to give value, but really in the way that they deliver it is they're taking validation, like tit for tat. They're like, okay, I'm gonna say this thing. Can you laugh at my joke? Can I tell you this thing that will solve your problem? Can you validate me as a problem solver? I can suggest a cool thing to do, and then you'll agree to come with me. And it's this like exchange of value that it's looked at by the nice guys as a zero-sum game, where it's kind of like, okay, I give, she gives, I give, she gives, we reciprocate, we balance out. But in reality, it's just a higher level taker energy, and there's not a lot of depth in that process. And so when you're generous in your conversation, you're trying to give as much as possible, regardless of how much you're receiving in return. You don't mitigate the things that, or you don't meter the things that you are saying and the things that you're trying to add to the conversation by their response, then it opens them up to continue to indulge in your generosity. If they feel like they're unsafe by having to relinquish more than they want to at the time, or become more intimate than they'd prefer to be, then they will kind of shut the flow of the conversation off from their end. But if you show a lot of compassion, or you show a lot of generosity through your compassion, they will feel the need to continue to feed that, because they're feeling good and getting a lot of value, feeling very validated, feeling very important by you continuing to talk this way. And the more and more investment they give in, it's just the better for your building rapport, for your longevity of trust. And you can give on your own terms without being a nice guy, and like the tit for tat nice guy. But you also will reap the benefits of that later. Like, even if you end up getting friend zoned super fast, you still have a lot of esteem and rapport in that person's head. And when they introduce you to other people and they talk about you to other people in the social group scene, it's going to create a lot of rapport, tangentially. And you can always dial it back by setting hard boundaries, by setting arbitrary boundaries and things like that. We'll talk about those in later videos. But you can always, you always want to be a good person. You want to be a safe person. You want to make people feel encouraged when they're around you. And then if they start to take advantage of you, you can set boundaries, and you can set arbitrary boundaries, and you can snap it back and make sure that they don't take advantage of you. But you should always lead with the positive energy, because there's so many people walking around super guarded, and super walls up, and then they can't actually relate with the core. And so when you come through with real generosity, real compassion, they're gonna notice the difference. You're gonna stand out in that sea of people who are busy just trying to get their own and protect themselves. Oh yeah, this is a decent one. Talk in upbeat terms. And when you're conversing with other people, there are many different ways to phrase things, and it all gives this impression of how you come off. That's redundant, but it all gives this impression of you that is a little edgy, or a little mysterious, or a little open, or a little transparent, or whatever it is you're giving off. We, in some of the advanced stuff where we kind of like nag and gaslight and do all these other playful topics in a social scenario, those things have to be predicated with a little bit of trust. Like, you can't you can't just come up and insult someone. It's not banter if they don't trust you at all. If there's no rapport built, it's not banter. You're just rude, right? But you can start fucking with people. You can start, doing the the gaslighting and the all the little phrases that we play with to make conversation fun and bantery. You can do that after you build a rapport. So when you're talking in upbeat terms, what I mean is like, there are times where, I assert myself in conversation. We're like, nope, you're wrong. Fucking totally wrong. Not only do I disagree with you on a fucking moral level because you're broken inside, right? And I say shit like that where once I build trust with somebody, I can say those things and it's funny, but it's not funny with no rapport, right? So consider using words like, I don't really hold the same view, right? Or you don't want to say you're wrong, you're mistaken, like, you're stupid, right? You don't want to make people feel like that, especially if you haven't built any rapport with them. When you start building and when it comes to compassion, you want to use phrases that are light on the trauma, right? You don't want to hit the triggers right away because then you may or may not get to continue the interaction and build the rapport that's necessary to have that more sophisticated banter. Another way to show compassion is, I don't know, just tip 6 or something. Yeah, another way to show compassion is to establish this frame of gratitude. With most people that sit in front of me and talk to me, I am super grateful that they're there, one, and I'm also super grateful that I get to have the interaction. I have a bunch of perspectives. I had a heart attack 4 or 5 years ago, and thought it was the end of my life, and I changed a whole bunch of stuff around when that happened, and I have a lot more perspective on just super appreciating the person that's in front of me most of the time, because it's just valuable to have an interaction. I remember when I couldn't talk to anybody and I didn't have any social skills, and so I was afraid of talking to people. I was just super lonely all the time, and so having somebody share their life with me, even for a moment, is super, it's just great. And sometimes they share their pain, sometimes they share their abuse, and I have to kind of set some boundaries, but it's still like a net positive for me to be able to share with another human in the short time that we have on this planet. And so I show that in not only in my actions and my words, but just kind of in my overall vibe. It's like I'm super grateful to be around people and have those people interact with me. And I thank them when it's appropriate. I don't get all simpy on it, but it's, if you're grateful for stuff, if you're thankful for stuff, and then you thank other people in front of them for stuff, it just makes people feel good and builds on to that trust and rapport and all that stuff that we were talking about earlier. I'm not a big fan of that one. So that point number 7 is keep an open mind. I've talked about that kind of ad nauseum and the communication stuff. But basically, like, if you're going to be compassionate, you don't want to shut people down. And you want to, like, even if you disagree with them, you kind of want to redirect them towards your ideas like a flow of water. You don't want to, like, stop it and dam it up or redirect harshly. You just kind of want to, like, oh, okay, we'll just kind of move from this side. Well, have you thought about this? And just drive them towards this other idea that you may have to see if they can appreciate it, because they're not going to appreciate what you have to say without you reciprocating or leading in that way. Like, if you shut them down right away, they're going to have a mind to shut you down, and as you're trying to share. And so, especially when practicing compassion in the social space, you want to keep an open mind and just sort of accept what's going on with their communication, because you're not worried about the words that are coming out of their mouth so much. You're worried about, you're not worried, but you're concerned with, or your focused attention is on the emotions that are underlying them, what drives them as humans, what motivates them, what keeps them going, what wakes them up in the morning. Once you start learning those things about a person, you kind of have them. Like, you have all of what you need to carry some sort of collaboration on into the future. So keep an open mind. Yeah, conflict. So this point says act like an adult. Don't point fingers at people if you don't have all the data. Don't judge, don't gossip, like stuff like that. Like, it's not always advantageous to not get angry or not accuse people or whatever, but it's always advantageous, especially when you're practicing compassion, to make sure that you don't make people feel on the defensive. The whole point of compassion is to make them feel like it's safe and it's okay to open up. And so don't do anything that blocks that up. Like I said, just like the water, you want to kind of like flow it in the direction of where you kind of want the conversation to go, rather than make people feel invalidated for speaking, because getting them to continue speaking is exactly the point of using these tools to become more attractive. Because if people like you, people are attracted to your energy and your vibe, there's not going to be a lot of conflict involved with that. On the flip side, there are some people who are super traumatized, and they will be attracted to combat. They'll be attracted to conflict. And so when you kind of see that, you can shift it to the more dark side stuff. We haven't covered that yet on this channel, but we will. And there might be an appropriate time to sort of get into it with somebody, as long as you maintain control and it's not erratic, right? You can still maintain the control of safety and still vehemently disagree with somebody and push their buttons, because as long as there's respect in the thing, you're still going to generate a large amount of attraction. Yeah, empathy, kindness. Yeah. So as far as compassion in a group scenario, the best way to get people to play nice, to care for each other, to listen to each other, and stop putting their own needs first, in the initial out the gate. If you're trying to kind of run a whole group this way, I was out with a group of people, I guess it was a week and a half ago, and they're just intense gossipers. Like they like to just talk shit about everybody. And while that can be fun and shit, it doesn't really do much for compassion's sake, for making people feel safe, seen, heard, and ultimately put their trust in you. And so when there's 4 or 5 of them and they're all kind of running at this frequency in this model, I basically don't participate. I'll sit on the outside and they'll ask my opinion, and I'll be like, yeah, that's just not something I do. I don't really talk a lot of shit about people. I'm more concerned with what drives them, what motivates them, whatever. And so the best way to deal with a group, because if they think that you're right, they'll sort of calm down and change their tune, gradually over time. Like I said, it's like water. You just kind of like got to flow it somewhere else. And so there's some things I don't put up with. Like I don't put up with talking shit about people. I don't put up with drama in the sense of like manipulation. So this one girl, she was like, I just have a lot of anxiety right now, and can you just do this for me? And I'm like, no, I'm allergic to anxiety. I don't deal with that. And she's like, what? Why can't you just? I'm like, you're a fully capable human. You can do that yourself. Because she wasn't using the anxiety thing as if she was actually overwhelmed. I've actually, I've seen what overwhelm looks like, and she was just using it to manipulate. So I don't really put up with that shit. So I just, no, I'm not gonna do that. And then she finally got frustrated and left. And when I came back out, she tried a different strategy, because that one didn't work, and she was completely different, and there was no bad feelings. And so leading that way, this is what I'm getting at. This isn't actually a point. I was just kind of like riffing on this. In a group scenario, the best way to create compassion in the space is to lead that way, and just to be firm in leading it that way. Like you don't have to tell them they're wrong. You don't have to modify their behavior and say you should do it this way. When you have rapport with the group and they respect you a little bit, then you do it the way you want to do it, and then they look at you as a model. If you model that in leadership, then they'll begin to kind of fall in line over time. And if you don't have rapport with the group, then people can try to destroy you for disagreeing with you, right? They can be like, yeah, you don't fit in here, blah, 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 blah. I find that if you just kind of stand strong and like, yeah, well, that's just not me. I don't do that. They will eventually either stop the stupid behavior around you because they're not going to get that rise out of you or your approval, or they, at least they stop, or they find someplace else to be. They, sometimes if they want a certain type of ego hit from gossiping or talking shit about people or making fun of people or whatever, they will around you, they'll feel uncomfortable doing it, especially when you don't like react to being that way. Like if they making fun of people and you're like, yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and they go, well, you blah blah blah, and they attack, and they're like, okay, great, and they go, okay, well, I'm not having fun here, so then they go somewhere else, right? They go make fun of another group of people, or they go talk shit about another group of people. And I think that just leading in that way, people will just filter themselves out. And whether or not they have rapport with you, most people can't stand the kind of conflict that you represent by being like standing strong. Like some people will combat, like they'll throw a verbal punch, and then you throw a verbal punch back, and they do this dance, and they like the martial effect of it all. But if you just kind of like, no, yeah, I'm not really gonna budge on that. That's just me, and you take full responsibility for it. They just leave you alone, or they do the extinction burst spike where they try to fuck with you a little bit more just to see if you'll break, and then you don't break, and then they get bored. It's like you're playing with a cat, and then like you just make the toys still, and they're just like, it's not fighting, like it's dumb, and they go off and leave. And so, like I said, I think that practicing compassion is super important, especially when you're talking about becoming an attractive human. And to lead that in a group, the best way to do it is to model it. The best way to do it is to lead it. So with that little tangent on the side, I think I'm done with compassion in social environments. We're doing this every day, me and Jackson, sometimes twice a day on this channel. So subscribe if you like this type of long form content. If you have any suggestions on how you want the delivery to be, or any topics that you'd like me to talk about in the future, please go ahead and stick it in the comments below, or send us a DM at Duke Delay on Instagram. We do this every day. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Until then, stay awesome.